this is Pretty from It's a Pretty World. Today I'm joining SimonSaysStamp for the second day blog hop, and I'm using this stamp set called Be Kind from the new Hey Bestie release. And what I'm doing is I'm going to use these Copic colors that I've pre-selected on 3 different surfaces. So it's a different kind of video today. I'm really not going to show you how I'm making the card, but the technique part of it, the coloring part of it. So I have already pre-stamped my eucalyptus branch on 3 different surfaces, and this one is on vellum using white embossing powder. The embossing powder that I used is SimonSaysStamp Fine Detail Embossing Powder. And I've also used a little thicker like a cardstock vellum versus a very thin vellum, and then I chose 4 different shades, and I chose G28, BG18, BG72 and G41 as my color. And I'm going to show you my preferred way of coloring on the vellum, and then I'll show you a couple other ways as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip this vellum sheet on the back side, and I'm going to start coloring from the back. And I'm starting off with my darkest color, which is G28, on the areas where I think there would be shadows for this leaf. And the leaf color itself, I'm trying to make it look like the blue eucalyptus leaf. And I'm going to blend this using BG18. Now make sure when you're blending this color that you're not going all the way into the G28, but just at the tip of it. And also use your pen very lightly. Don't press it down, because this is a slick surface. You will lose the color variation, and I'll show you after a while in the next what I mean, in the next leaf what I mean. And then I'm going to blend that out using BG72. And when I'm done blending, not really blending, you're just actually flicking layers one after the other, not over each other, but one after the other. And then I'm going to take this G41 and I'm going to color it. What I did is I flipped the vellum to the front, and I'm coloring G41 on top of the right side of the vellum. And then if you do get ink onto the white embossing place, it's very easy to clean it up. You just take your blending pen 00 and then just go over it, and then the color should come out, and that's pretty easy. And there you can see and the second method to do the coloring is to take the darker shade of green and the darker shade of blue, and take your lighter BG and then dip it into it, and then you color from behind. And you can see the difference between the first one that I did and the second one. The first one has a little bit of variation, the second one is quite flat. Now what I'm going to show you is if you were to add the colors and you were to go over it and blend it, you see what I'm doing, and then you go with the lighter one, you will completely lose all the variation of color. You see how it kind of mixes up and there's really no color. But when you flip it in the front, it really doesn't make any difference. It's still going to look nice. It's just that you won't see enough color variation. And the other way to do it was also, if I did it the same way, if I added the blending and then I added I added the deeper color, the mid-tone and the lighter shade, and then if I, instead of doing G41 from the front, and I did it at the back itself, G41 being a lighter color and it has a lot of the blending solution in it, it actually takes away all the colors. It kind of blends everything in, and there's really nothing left. So again, when you flip it, they all look different, they all look varied, and they all look nice. So it's absolutely left up to you what kind of style you want to use. So what I did is I fussy cut 3 of those images, and then I just popped it onto embossed background, which is from For You background from SimonSaysStamp. And then I added the sentiment and added some bling onto it, and then that card was done. And the second card, I started off by stamping the same leaf image using Fog Ink onto a craft cardstock, and I chose some colors using this hex chart from Sandy Olnock, and it's a really helpful hex chart. And then again, the colors that I chose are very similar. They're exactly the same colors. It's just maybe I chose one different color for each, and that's the idea. What I'm trying to say is I'm going to show you similar colors, but a little bit of change in the hue or the saturation would make a difference. Now remember, this is a craft cardstock, so there's already color on the cardstock, so the color that you're going to apply on it will either get darker or lighter, so based on what the base is. So I'm going to use G29 as my darkest color. Now, because this is a no line coloring, you have a lot of options to do your own stuff. Like you can really not change, enhance the image that you have stamped. So in my case, I have started with G20, I think it's G29. And make sure your pen is straight. You're holding the nib really straight. I'm drawing the line, the actual line, the center line, which the artist has already drawn right over it. And then once I have done drawing that line, I'm going to draw another fine line right next to it. Now, if you are not very comfortable making fine lines, it's perfectly fine. I'll show you a trick how to go about it as well. So I'm just drawing a very fine line right next to the artist drawn line. So I've already drawn the G29 over the artist drawn line and another fine line right next to it. I'm going to add the same dark shading on the top end of the leaf and the bottom end of the leaf as well. Right there, I'm just kind of creating a little bit of depth in the color. So my idea is to have shadows on both ends, so the leaves looks curved. I'll talk about it a little bit further. And then I took the BG18. I've slowed down this portion quite a bit so you can see what exactly I'm doing. That's why it's kind of slow. So I've taken BG18 and I'm going to blend that color over the G29 that I laid before. Now when you're blending, make sure you're going over that color multiple times so that you don't have any stark lines between the two. It blends well. And then after I'm done with the BG18, I'm going to go with BG72 and I'm going to blend that color into the cardstock. Now I'm going to leave a little bit of a highlight to show the highlight of the leaf itself, and then I'm going to take this G28 and I'm going to flick that right over all the colors. Actually, I'm going to use G41, not 28, G41 all over the image. What that does is it tones the color green. So the bottom color was more on the BG color. So when I added the green, you can see that it kind of makes it a little bit blue, like it kind of adds more green on top of it, and it's not as blue as before. And that's the idea of using the G21. I'm going to do the same thing again here, exactly the same. We're adding a fine line on the artist drawn line, the center, the vein of the the vein of the leaf. And then once I'm done doing that, I'm going to use another line right next to it, really close to it, making it like I'm creating a vein that is more predominant. Because this is a no line coloring, you can do things like that to modify your image. And also because it's no line coloring, let's say I did go a little farther away or farther into the image, I can kind of create the edges and clean the edges a bit more, because there's no dark line to stop me to do otherwise. So here again, I'm just taking my darkest color, which is G28, and putting it in all my shadow areas. Remember, if there is a leaf or a flower on another image, you want to make sure that you're laying a shadow, like a cast shadow on it as well. So you can see there's a little leaf right about this large leaf, and I laid the shadow underneath the little leaf as well, showing that the leaf is above this particular leaf. And then I'm again blending this with BG18. Make sure you're blending it, you're going multiple times over it, so you're kind of you are not having any blend lines between each other. I'm sorry if you can hear all the cars outside. My art room, my craft room is very close to the window of my craft room is close to the roadside, and so the street side, so you can really hear some cars, so I'm sorry about that. And here again, I'm blending BG72, again blending the last BG18, and then once I'm done with that, I'll go with G41 all over it. Now when I went with G41 here, I'm just showing you, I just went over the line, the white, what do you say, the line that I created. So the trick to that is then, if you have lost your line, or even if you do not add your line, you can, what you do is you can just color the way I colored, and then you can just take a white gel pen in either a fine tip point, I think it's called 05 or a 08 tip, and you just draw in that vein in the center. There you go. I'm just kind of making sure it's flowing, and then just drawing the vein right in the center, and you're good to go. So you don't necessarily have to do, if you're uncomfortable making fine lines, you can easily do that. And then what I did, I want to show you what I did with the stem. For the stem, again, in nature, when you look at the twigs or the stems of a plant, they're not straight, they're not linear, they're not absolutely straight. So they do have a little bit of curves, and they do have a little bit of like, you know, variation in the way the stems are. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the lightest of my brown shade, in my case it's E13, and I'm laying the branch. So I'm just creating a little bit of curves, few curves here and there, so that the line does not look perfectly straight. And then I'm taking E17 and I'm putting it in the darker shades where the two branches meet, or two leaf branches meet, or the places or the edges of the leaves, or the, you know, wherever I feel there would be a shadow. I added this darker color, and then after I was done adding this darker color, I went back with my E13 over it, and that made such a difference. It really created a beautiful, dainty looking branch, and I really loved how this turned out. And I continued coloring this image just like the way I was talking about. I'm not really, again, as I said, I'm not showing you how I made the card completely. And once I was all done with this, all I did, here I'm just showing you the difference between how it would, the straight line versus a curved line. And then I just took a rectangle die, cut the image, and I mounted it onto a top folding card, which I had stamped using my UR background stamp using Fog Ink, and then I added the sentiment, and I was done with that. Now for the third surface, I'm using a white surface. Now remember, unlike the craft where you already have a color at the bottom, this does not. So it's basically a blank canvas, and also that means to say all your colors are going to be quite true to what they are in the pen. So what I did is, instead of starting with G28 in this case, unlike this one, I started by using BG 18. What I'm trying to say here is the curve of the leaf. So the other one, the curve is on the top, and this one I'm trying to see if I can curve it inwards. So like this leaf here, there's a vein in the middle, and then the leaf curves outwards. You see the top it's curving outwards. So I'm going to make sure that the highlights are on that part of the leaf. So because there's a vein already in this, I'm limited to do what I can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start laying my shadow, which in this case is BG18, on the left edge of the leaf, and then on the right side of the vein that the artist has created. You see that? The left side and then the right side of the vein. So so the left edge of the leaf and the right side of the vein, and then I'm going to take that darker color onto the right edge as well. Just like that. So, and then I'm going to blend it towards, like I'm going to start blending it inwards. You'll see what I'm saying. So I'm going to take the next color, which is BG72, and I'm going to start blending the darker shade. So you see this one is on the right side, and then on the other side it's going to be on the left side. Now as I'm going to keep continuing to blend it, and once I'm done blending, this is where G21 makes a difference. G21, now when I lay G20, when you see how bluish it is, the moment I lay G21 on top of this blue-green, it kind of breaks down that blue color a bit more and makes it a little bit more greener. You can see what I'm saying. And then can you see how that highlight is in the center of the leaf, and it's making the vein look inset? And then I'm taking this G00 and I'm going to go all over it, and you can see how that leaf looks like it's inwards, and the leaf is the vein is inward and the leaf is outward. I also like to go back with my darkest color and lay it again in the shadow areas where I laid before. And then I'm going to blend this again with G72, and I'm going to skip the G41. I'm not going to add the green color once again, the G41 color again. Instead, I'm just going to use G72, and I'm going to blend this again using G00. And what happens is, because the G00 is the lightest color and it has what you call the blending solution a lot more in it, it kind of creates a molted effect on the leaf, and I'll tell you what it is. I'll show you a little bit, and you can see how the leaf is now curving outwards and the vein is inside. I'm doing this again for another leaf, and this time I'm making sure that the card shadow is laid below the leaf that is above it, and then the leaf have the shadows the way we spoke about, and you can see how the leaf varies. So there's a little bit of variation between this leaf and the leaf that I colored before. I don't know if you can tell a difference, but there is a bit of difference. This is what I was talking about. This is a eucalyptus leaf. Obviously this is artificial, but you can see there's a molted effect on that leaf. It's not a plain green. So when you add the lighter G00, it kind of creates that molted effect on it, and I really liked it. Actually, the camera is really not picking up that effect as much, but in real life it's there. So I continued coloring this image in the same form, and then I completed it. In fact, the first one I had actually stamped that image on in the middle of the cardstock, and then I cut that in a rectangle, and then I stamped the UR background in black, and then I also created a frame in craft, added it and mounted it onto a top folding craft note card, and added some gemstones, and I was done. And here are all the 3 cards that I created. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.